Okay, so in this video, we're going to go through the differences between traditional modeling versus modern modeling method. Okay, so in the traditional method, right, you start your base mesh inside Maya, okay, which I think you're already familiar in the previous CMS module. Okay, then once you finish with your modeling, you then send your mesh to ZBrush, in which you can do the sculpting things like skin fold, skin pore, the scar, and all that necessary detail. Okay, so once you complete, then you can send back to software like Substance Painter or Mudbox or Photoshop to do your texturing. Okay, once finished, then you can send back and put or assemble everything back inside Maya. Okay, things like your normal map, displacement. Okay, we haven't learned this yet. Okay, and apply the map to your low res mesh. Okay, this is something that you already are familiar. Okay, and this is just a more visual representation. Okay, so let me play the slide. Okay, again, you create your character inside Maya, right? You make sure all the UV is already applied. Okay, and you can select everything. Then you send this to ZBrush to be sculpted. Okay, and the plugin that we're going to be using is called Cozy. Okay, and here, right, this is what the ZBrush environment look like. So this is where you're going to be like sculpting your character. Okay, so in this video, I already fast forward and already complete my sculpting stage already. Okay, so your high res is already complete. Okay, and you can see like there are some cloth wrinkle, some muscle definition, right, that you can see in here. Now, once you complete, then you can send your mesh or your UV rather to Photoshop maybe, or to Substance Painter, so you can do your texturing stage. Okay, then you can export the necessary map like the albedo, the roughness, the metalness, the normal map, and all that thing. Okay, so once complete, you can put everything back in Maya. Right, so this is the complete render, right, of the normal map, of the low res, right, with the normal map apply, the albedo, the roughness, and all that necessary map. Okay, so very simple. Now, um, whereas in modern workflow, you start your high res in ZBrush right away as compared to in Maya. Okay, so you do all the character with all the detail. Okay, you don't have to worry about topology just yet. Okay, so once you finish with your high res, then you move on to low res. So it's like doing things backward. Okay, so then you do your low res by doing the retopology and then the UV map. Then you reproject your high res onto the low res. Now, from this point onward, I think it's all the same. Don't have to repeat. It's just that the beginning part of this workflow is just vice versa. Okay, so it's the opposite of what the traditional workflow do. Okay, so when it comes to this method, like which one to use, well, as a start, I think you should learn the fundamental. Okay, that's why like the CA1 require you to submit using the traditional method. Okay, then you can move on to modern for CA2. Okay, so again, when you are doing traditional method, when you make the base mesh, things can be quite slow. Okay, and I usually use Maya when I have to create my hard surface modeling because it's very precise. Okay, you can move the vertex and there's a lot of grid. Okay, and the good thing about this old method is that you define a topology at the start. Okay, so that way you don't have to go through the retopology stage. Now, if you compare that to the modern method, right, you can create like the base mesh very easy, very fast as compared to this old slow method. Okay, and people usually use this for organic. So if you want to create like character or cartoon character, whatever, anything to do with organic, people usually use this method because it's much faster. Okay, but of course you can also do hard surface inside ZBrush. Okay, now another thing that you have to be mindful when you do the modern method is that it requires some topology stage. Okay, so this topology also will take time. Okay, so you have to be mindful about that. Now, again, this is just a comparison, right, between the low res and the high res in the more modern method modeling. So, with the more modern method, right, you start with the high res like this. Okay, everything is like detail. Then you move your way to your base mesh. Okay, then from that you have to do some retopology work. Okay, so this retopology may require time to do. Then once you finish, right, you can project your high res to low res. Again, because in high res, uh, people don't really use the high res. They only use this for projection purposes only. Okay, because the rigger, the animator, we all use the low res. Okay, because this kind of density cannot be put in the game engine. Okay, uh, moving on. So this is what the base mesh look like, right? And this is what the high res look like. Okay, with the modern, they will start from here, then move backward, whereas in traditional, they will start from base mesh and then move forward to high res. Okay, so this is another comparison. So if you try to create this fish character, and this is what the base mesh look like. So already kind of resemble like the creature look like. Okay, this is something you have to keep in mind, that if you want to create this kind of sculpt, okay, your base mesh need to resemble like that. Okay, so I can see from this low res that this resemble this character. Okay, and then all this muscle definition will be taken care of by displacement map. Okay, now this is example is wrong. Okay, you can see like the low res is very different from the high res. Okay, so this sphere does not resemble what the high res character looks like. So even if you apply the displacement map, this will not work. Okay, because the difference is too much, it's too big. Okay, for the displacement to work. Okay, so this is what your low res should look like. Okay, moving on. So I think baking is very easy process. So what they do is that they will extract information from your high res, right, and export as a normal like TIFF, okay, image format. Okay, so this is a calculation. So once you have the low res with the correct topology, then you can apply all this bake information, things like normal map, displacement, and also some texture. So once you apply all these to this character, then you're gonna get like this kind of render. Okay, because again, people don't use high res, they only use like low res. So the low res is very important. So the idea is that we try to make the low res look like a high res by applying all these necessary map. Right, something like this: albedo, normal, bump, and displacement. Okay, so this look like high res, exactly like in ZBrush. Now again, like which software to extract. So once you get comfortable with all the homework and whatever, you know that you're gonna be using ZBrush to export displacement. Okay, and all the other texture map or the other map will be export using Substance Painter. Okay. Now, why do we need to send things back to Maya? Because ZBrush is a digital sculpting software and it cannot animate or rig. Okay, so there are limitations. So if you want to send this to game engine, you have to send back to Maya to do the proper cleanup and technical like necessity. So again, how are you gonna send this back to Maya? Well, we're gonna use the GoZ plugin. So this plugin will allow you to send object back and forth to Maya in ZBrush. Okay, this is just the sculpting approach. I've seen like many students try to just jump to level 3 right away. Okay, I think it's incorrect. Sculpting is like drawing, so you should always start with the sketch. This is your super low res. Okay, then you build your way up. Okay, so get the anatomy correct first. So once anatomy, proportion, everything's correct, then you just start adding like secondary detail. Okay, so once you finish, then you can put the detail. Okay, most of the students like from here just jump in right away and adding like subdivision and end up like the sculpting looks crappy. Okay, so this kind of process you cannot skip. Okay, just like drawing, you do the sketch, then you put detail later. Because if you put detail right away, then you're kind of missing like on the bigger detail like the anatomy and proportion. Okay, something that you really need to keep in mind. Okay, always start with the rough shape first. Now again, when you want to send things to ZBrush, always keep quads, right? I think triangle also work, but quads is the best. Okay, if you try to send something like N-gon, they're gonna give you an error and you have to fix it up. Okay, so make sure everything is clean, the naming convention is correct and okay, right? And then you can send things to ZBrush. Okay, this is just some reminder. Everything must be quad, and most importantly, at this stage, you don't have to ask like, should I UV the object or whatever. What if it's only one color? Where at this stage, everything must be UV, because later when you want to put a texture, then no UV, then you have to move like a few steps back, and it's like wasting quite a bit of time. Okay, so all the object, all the mesh need to be UV properly. Okay, so this is just a checklist. Okay, first you have to create your base mesh in Maya. Okay, make sure topology is correct. Okay, make sure you have UV. Okay, so at this stage you should save or backup your file in case something happen. Then you should should have a few backups. Okay, so once everything is done, you can move on to ZBrush, and from there on, this is just like detailing. Okay, you can, so once finished, then you can do texturing, and you can go back to Maya, right? Then you can export whatever you have in ZBrush, then assign all the necessary map to Maya and light and render. Okay, so this is basically what the menu we have for this term. Okay, this is basically your CA1. And again, I expect everybody to complete the model and the UV, right, before next lesson, because we don't want to spend like 3 weeks doing this in Maya. Okay, this is something that you can do in less than half a day, right? Base mesh, everything is just basic, right? Everything is UV properly, everything is nice. Then you can send to ZBrush, because this module is all about ZBrush.